The year was 1980. Horror was on the edge of transformation. Slashers like Friday the 13th and Prom Night were about to dominate the box office. But that wasn't the whole story. Beneath the headlines, filmmakers around the world were experimenting with atmosphere, shocks, and strange new ideas. It was a year where Italian splatter met American Gothic, where psychological breakdowns stood side by side with mutant infestations, and where low-budget oddities carved out cult followings on late-night television and VHS shelves. Tonight, we're diving into 1980, exploring 10 overlooked horror films that prove the start of a new decade was every bit as daring and disturbing as the years that followed. The Boogey Man, 1980. As children, Lacey and Willie endured a night of terror when their abusive mother's boyfriend was murdered in front of a mirror. Years later, that shattered glass still carries a deadly curse. When the past is disturbed, something evil is released, a vengeful force that strikes anyone who dares to look too closely into the mirror's reflection. Directed by Uli Lommel, The Boogey Man combines supernatural horror with slasher-style carnage. Lommel, who would later become a prolific cult filmmaker, crafts an eerie atmosphere out of rural settings and domestic unease. Susanna Love stars as Lacey, a woman haunted by childhood trauma, while Nicholas Love portrays her brother Willie, carrying scars of his own. Their performances ground the film's outlandish premise in personal dread. The film's most striking device is its use of mirrors, ordinary household objects transformed into gateways for violence. Victims meet grisly ends through shards of reflective glass, each death staged with a surreal blend of slasher brutality and supernatural menace. The mirror becomes both a weapon and a symbol of the past, refusing to stay buried. What sets The Boogey Man apart is its fusion of styles. It borrows from possession tales, haunted house traditions, and the rising slasher trend, while adding its own strange energy. The pacing shifts between quiet, eerie unease and sudden shocking bursts of violence, keeping viewers unsettled. Though criticized for echoing elements of earlier films like Halloween and The Exorcist, it carved out a cult following thanks to its bold imagery and unique premise. With its unsettling score and off-kilter atmosphere, The Boogey Man remains one of those oddities from 1980 that feels both familiar and distinctly its own. Macabre, 1980. In New Orleans, a grieving mother clings to her past in ways that defy sanity. Jane Baker, devastated by the death of her young son, isolates herself in a boarding house, while her daughter tries desperately to reach her. But Jane's mourning hides a grotesque secret, one that turns love and loss into something horrifyingly unnatural. Directed by Italian filmmaker Lamberto Bava, in his directorial debut, Macabre set the tone for his career in horror. Bernice Stigers stars as Jane, delivering a performance that balances fragility with unsettling obsession. Stanko Molnar plays the blind landlord who begins to suspect what's happening in Jane's room, while Veronica Zinni takes on the role of the increasingly desperate daughter. The film thrives on atmosphere. The sweltering southern heat, the claustrophobic boarding house, and the slow unraveling of Jane's psyche. Unlike the splatter-driven Italian horrors of the time, Macabre leans on psychological unease and taboo-breaking imagery, saving its most shocking revelation for the finale. What makes Macabre stand out is its willingness to push boundaries. While the pace is deliberate, the payoff is unforgettable, cementing the film's reputation as one of the boldest Italian horror debuts. Bava shows a knack for tension and perversity, carving his own identity while nodding to his father, Mario Bava, the master of Italian Gothic cinema. Not as widely known as the later gore spectacles of the decade, Macabre lingers in memory for its unnerving portrayal of grief turned monstrous. It's a film that unsettles, not with jump scares, but with the chilling suggestion of how far someone might go to hold on to the dead. The Ninth Configuration, 1980. In a remote castle converted into a military psychiatric hospital, a new commander arrives to restore order. Colonel Kane, played with quiet intensity by Stacy Keach, is tasked with treating a group of eccentric, often violent soldiers whose behavior blurs the line between madness and performance. As Kane delves deeper, his methods raise questions not only about the patients, but about his own past and identity. Written and directed by William Peter Blatty, author of The Exorcist, The Ninth Configuration is less a straightforward horror film and more a philosophical descent into the human soul. Blatty used the asylum setting as a stage for existential debates, surreal humor, and sudden violence. Alongside Keach, the cast includes Scott Wilson, Jason Miller, and Ed Flanders, each delivering layered performances that keep the tone shifting between absurdity and tragedy. The film is filled with memorable imagery. A man attempting to stage Hamlet with dogs in costume, sprawling monologues about faith and suffering, and stark contrasts between comedy and bleak horror. As Kane's carefully constructed exterior begins to crack, the story builds toward revelations that question the nature of sacrifice, sanity, and redemption. What makes the Ninth Configuration unforgettable is its ambition. It refuses to fit neatly into genre boxes, mixing war film, dark comedy, psychological horror, and theological exploration. The result is a strange, haunting work that lingers long after its final act. Overlooked on release but later hailed as a cult masterpiece, The Ninth Configuration stands as one of 1980's most daring and original entries. A film as unsettling in its ideas as it is in its imagery. The Island, 1980. When journalist Blair Maynard sets out to investigate a series of mysterious boat disappearances in the Caribbean, he discovers the last thing he expected: a hidden colony of modern-day pirates. Descendants of 17th-century buccaneers, they live in isolation, raiding ships and leaving no survivors. But when Maynard and his young son are captured, the reporter must fight to survive and protect his child against a society ruled by blood and brutality. Directed by Michael Ritchie and based on the novel by Peter Benchley, author of Jaws, The Island blends adventure and horror with a savage edge. Michael Caine stars as Maynard, bringing intensity to the role of a father pushed to his limits, while David Warner delivers a chilling turn as the ruthless leader of the pirate clan. Their performances give weight to a story that could have easily veered into pulp, grounding the savagery with genuine stakes. The film is notable for its atmosphere. Sunlit beaches that hide unspeakable violence, ramshackle pirate villages, and sudden bursts of bloodshed that shatter the tropical calm. Unlike traditional seafaring adventures, this is no swashbuckling fantasy, but a brutal vision of survival against a society frozen in time. Though it baffled critics and audiences on release, The Island has since found appreciation as a dark, offbeat thriller that dared to twist the adventure formula into something far more sinister. With its mix of sun-drenched beauty and shocking brutality, it stands as one of the more unusual horror hybrids of 1980. Contamination, 1980. When a mysterious shipment of coffee beans arrives in New York, authorities discover the cargo holds a deadly secret: pulsating green eggs that explode with lethal force. Anyone splattered by their contents dies in gruesome fashion, and the investigation leads to a conspiracy stretching from South America to NASA itself. At the center of it all is an alien creature pulling the strings, its influence infecting the human race, one victim at a time. Directed by Italian filmmaker Luigi Cozzi, working here under the name Louis Coates, Contamination is a bold attempt to ride the wave of Ridley Scott's Alien while creating something entirely its own. Ian McCulloch, fresh from Lucio Fulci's Zombie, stars as Colonel Holmes alongside Louise Marlowe and Marino Massey, who lend credibility to the pulpy chaos. The film's set pieces are unforgettable. Dimly lit warehouses stacked with glowing eggs, hazmat-suited investigators facing splattering doom, and the climactic reveal of a massive alien overlord. The practical effects, though rough around the edges, create a sense of grotesque spectacle that fans of Italian exploitation cinema treasure. What makes Contamination memorable is its blend of science fiction paranoia and graphic horror. It captures the anything-goes energy of Italian genre cinema, delivering wild ideas, over-the-top violence, and a pounding score by Goblin that elevates every scene. Dismissed by critics as a cheap knockoff, it instead earned cult status for its audacity and sheer entertainment value. Contamination may have borrowed inspiration, but it turned those ideas into something stranger, gorier, and impossible to forget. The Children, 1980. A school bus drives through a toxic cloud on a quiet rural road, and when it emerges, the kids inside are no longer the same. Their skin pale, their smiles frozen, and their touch carrying a deadly charge, the children return home. But now they bring death to anyone who embraces them. What should be a symbol of innocence becomes a nightmare, as parents and townsfolk realize that their own children are the killers. Directed by Max Kalmanowicz, The Children takes a low-budget concept and pushes it into shocking territory. The film stars Martin Shakar and Gil Rogers, with Gail Garnett giving a standout performance as a mother forced to confront the unthinkable. While the acting may be uneven, the premise is carried by its audacity and its willingness to go places that other horror films of the era avoided. The imagery is both absurd and disturbing. Tiny figures in school uniforms walking slowly across fields, their hands outstretched, bringing instant death to anyone they touch. The blackened fingernails of the children serve as a chilling visual marker, transforming something mundane into a symbol of horror. What makes The Children stick in memory is its exploitation-style courage to twist the most sacred bonds, family, safety, and trust, into the stuff of nightmares. It was never destined for mainstream success, but its VHS life turned it into a notorious cult title, remembered for both its camp value and its unsettling concept. Equal parts ridiculous and disturbing, The Children proves that sometimes the most frightening monsters are the ones you least expect, the ones sitting at your dinner table, waiting with open arms. The Awakening, 1980. An archaeological dig in Egypt uncovers the tomb of Queen Kara, a mysterious figure shrouded in legend. When Egyptologist Matthew Corbeck insists on opening the tomb, he unleashes a curse that follows him home. Soon after, his daughter is born, and as she grows older, strange events suggest she may be carrying the spirit of the long-dead queen, a reincarnation bound to bring death and destruction. Directed by Mike Newell, who would later helm 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and Donnie Brasco, this early entry in his career takes inspiration from classic mummy tales, but blends them with a creeping psychological edge. Charlton Heston leads as Corbeck, bringing gravitas to a father unraveling under forces he cannot control, while Susanna York adds intensity as his increasingly estranged wife. Stephanie Zimbalist, as the daughter caught between life and legend, gives the film a haunting presence as the true weight of the curse emerges. The imagery is steeped in dread. Ancient tombs and artifacts carry menace. Visions blur the line between reality and possession, and the quiet inevitability of fate casts a shadow over every scene. Unlike the pulpier mummy films that came before, The Awakening aims for atmosphere, tension, and tragic inevitability. What makes the film memorable is its fusion of archaeological horror with family drama. It is as much about a father's obsession destroying his family as it is about ancient curses and reincarnated evil. Though overshadowed by bigger horror releases of 1980, it lingers with its slow burn, unsettling mood and a finale that closes the loop on a story steeped in fatalism. The Awakening is a reminder that sometimes horror doesn't come with jump scares or gore. It comes from the weight of history, pressing down on the present until it breaks. Mother's Day, 1980. 3 friends head into the New Jersey wilderness for a weekend reunion, expecting laughter and nostalgia. Instead, they stumble into the clutches of 2 deranged brothers and their sadistic mother, who rules over them with twisted devotion. What begins as a camping trip quickly spirals into a nightmare of cruelty, survival, and bloody revenge. Directed by Charles Kaufman and produced by Troma Entertainment, Mother's Day is one of the most notorious exploitation films of its era. Beatrice Ponce delivers a chilling performance as the domineering matriarch, encouraging her sons to torment their captives in the name of family tradition. Nancy Hendrickson, Deborah Luce, and Tiana Pierce star as the women forced to endure the ordeal, bringing raw emotion to roles that shift from victimhood to resilience. The film blends brutality with biting satire, skewering consumer culture, family values, and the darker side of Americana. Its backwoods setting heightens the isolation, while the grim violence pushes boundaries even for the exploitation wave of the early 80s. What sets Mother's Day apart is the balance between shocking cruelty and moments of dark humor. Kaufman creates a film that's as grotesque as it is absurd, leaning into the extremes of horror while planting seeds of commentary beneath the blood and grime. Reviled by critics on release but embraced by cult audiences, Mother's Day remains a disturbing yet fascinating entry in 1980 horror. It's a film that dares viewers to look at family bonds twisted into something monstrous. The Night of the Hunted, 1980. On a lonely stretch of road, a man rescues a disoriented young woman who seems to have lost not only her way, but also her memory. He brings her to a mysterious high-rise clinic, where she joins others suffering from the same strange condition. Their identities fading, their thoughts slipping away. But this is no ordinary hospital. Surveillance, confinement, and sudden acts of violence hint at something sinister behind the walls. Directed by French filmmaker Jean Rollin, best known for his surreal vampire films, The Night of the Hunted takes a different path. One of psychological decay and dreamlike unease. Brigitte Lahaye stars as Elizabeth, giving the film a haunting center as her confusion and vulnerability gradually transform into dread. Alain Duclos plays the man who tries to help her, caught in a situation far darker than he imagined. The imagery is stark and unsettling. Patients wandering blank-eyed through sterile corridors, faces pressed against glass, and sudden bursts of violence that pierce the slow, hypnotic rhythm. Rollin strips away Gothic trappings, replacing them with a cold, modern landscape that feels just as otherworldly. What makes The Night of the Hunted memorable is its mood. It's less about jump scares than it is about the horror of losing yourself, piece by piece, while under the control of unseen forces. The film blends exploitation elements with genuine atmosphere, creating something at once bleak and strangely poetic. Though overshadowed by Rollin's more famous works, this 1980 entry endures as one of his most chilling experiments, a horror film that turns amnesia into a slow-motion apocalypse of the mind. Funeral Home, 1980. When a young woman named Heather spends the summer helping her grandmother at a rural bed and breakfast, she soon realizes the quiet house hides disturbing secrets. The property was once a funeral home, and despite her grandmother's insistence that those days are long gone, strange noises, whispered conversations, and sudden disappearances suggest otherwise. As Heather digs deeper, she uncovers a mystery that puts her directly in the path of a hidden killer. Directed by William Fruet, Funeral Home, also known as Cries in the Night, is a Canadian horror film that mixes Gothic atmosphere with slasher conventions. Leslie Donaldson, known for her Scream Queen roles in Curtains and Happy Birthday to Me, stars as Heather, bringing vulnerability and determination to the role. Kay Hawtrey gives a standout performance as the grandmother, whose stern exterior conceals layers of unease and menace. The film makes effective use of its setting, creaking floorboards, shadowy hallways, and the ever-present reminder of the house's mortuary past. The murders are staged with restraint compared to other slashers of the era, focusing more on suspense and mystery than gore, but the slow-burn pacing leads to a shocking reveal that gives the film its lasting impact. What sets Funeral Home apart is its blending of styles. It borrows the isolated house suspense of Gothic thrillers, while leaning into the masked killer formula that was dominating the early 80s. The result is a film that feels familiar yet distinct, carving out its own quiet corner in horror history. Though it never gained the notoriety of other Canadian slashers, Funeral Home lingers as a moody, atmospheric entry from 1980, one that rewards viewers who enjoy their horror with mystery, shadows, and a final sting of tragedy. And there you have it, 10 reminders that 1980 was more than just the launchpad for slasher dominance. From international experiments to gritty exploitation and strange hybrids, the year delivered a wild variety of horrors that still deserve attention today. These films may not have reached blockbuster status, but they live on through their atmosphere, their audacity, and their willingness to push boundaries in ways bigger productions often avoided. For even more VHS-era discoveries, visit our online VHS store at ejectmedia.etsy.com. And remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is someone's favorite.